Today's hearing comes after at least 20 million people watched the first one Thursday. That's according to Nielsen. But there are growing questions over just how exactly these hearings are impacting Americans' views of the January 6th attack. So here for more analysis is our Elections and Surveys Director, Anthony Salvanto. Very glad you are here. So, it was clear that they chose to start these series of hearings with a primetime special because they wanted as many Americans to watch as possible. And the focus has really been on how much our democracy was in jeopardy, how much the election was being threatened. But I wonder if that's how Americans view this. What's their take on that?
Yeah, and it's so important to set the context for all of this, right? Because they are holding the hearings in a very, widely viewed public forum. One of the things I wanted to show you to set some of that context is that in our most recent poll, you had a majority of people saying that finding out what happened is at least somewhat important. In fact, the plurality saying that it was very important. So that's kind of a start, and that's maybe why people have this interest. But to your point about democracy, which I happen to think is so important, one of the things we learned when we polled about this on the one-year anniversary, people looking back on January 6th, they were worried that what they saw back on Jan 6, 21 was a sign of increasing political violence in the country. And so you saw, setting the stage here again, you saw how people saw the longer-term ramifications of what they saw. And that stayed with people. In fact, it was right afterwards that people said they felt democracy itself was threatened. Now, the second beat on this, though, Anne-Marie, is for various reasons, right? For a lot of people, for a lot of Democrats, it was because of what they saw. For a lot of Republicans, it was because they were skeptical about the 2020 election. So, but everything you're seeing here goes back to that larger idea that democracy works when people think it works, when people think others and themselves are all following the same set of rules. And that's been undermined a little bit, it seems.
So speaking of perception, most Americans in both parties have condemned the events on January 6th, but their descriptions of what happened differ depending on the party I get. What exactly do Americans believe happened on that day?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Right afterwards, and then even when we followed up over the course of the years, people condemned the actions of what happened in they forced their way into the Capitol. You see that big disapproval number, 83%. You can't overlook the 1 in 5 who approve. That's a group, it's obviously a minority group, but clearly one worth paying some attention to because, as you see, it doesn't take a lot of people to have that kind of disruption. So that's a really key point. But then I do want to scroll over here and show you this to answer your question about two things, the differences in how they describe. First of all, we saw Republicans a little bit towards the somewhat disapprove category as opposed to the strongly disapprove category. And those are numbers that sort of go to another point, which is that description of what happened. When you ask people to put words around their feelings, their views of it, and this is something we did at the one-year anniversary of January 6th, you look at these differences, Democrats calling it an insurrection, Democrats saying it was an attempt to overthrow the government, but look at the sizable numbers of Republicans who called it patriotism, who called it defending freedom. And that comes back to this idea again of the, discredited, as you use the term, the unproven allegations the former president had about the 2020 election. So it's a difference between condemning the actions, but at the same time feeling like there was something wrong with 2020 among Republicans that underpins a lot of that.
That is so interesting. It's just like living in two Americans. I swear. So as we move forward, then, how do we watch the politics of all of this as we move forward into our next election now?
Yeah, great question. And I think the first thing you want to look at, let's stay with the Republicans for a moment. What should the party do about all this, right? I mean, Republican senators and congressmen are going to get questions following these hearings, right? What do you think? What did you learn? So we want to see the plurality of Republicans say that the party shouldn't take a position. but there is a sizable number who say the party should be criticizing those who entered the Capitol. And so this is part of that break, and we're going to see this as we go through the primaries. We've talked about it. What should a candidate do? Do they want somebody who's loyal to Donald Trump? Do they want somebody who's talking about the fact that, that they think there was, those kind of things going on in 2020? So look at this. In 2022, do you want a candidate in your party who thinks 2020 should have been? And look at these numbers among Republicans. You get 40% who want their candidates to be saying that the 2020 election should have been overturned. Again, that's not everybody. That's not all Republicans. But it's this part of the base, and they vote a lot in primaries, and that helps explain the dynamics you're seeing as Republicans select candidates for Senate and Congress now as we go through these primaries. That's part of the base, and they vote in primaries.
Man, that is such fascinating stuff, Anthony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.